Hey everyone, welcome to the video. Let's go over the 6-game NBA slate for today on Draftkings. But before we continue, as always, if you guys could just leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Really helps me out. Really appreciate it. You also follow me over on Twitter. I'm at Pennell16. And if you do want to support me over on Patreon, you get access to any of the extra content that I put out every single night or every single week, just depending on the sport. For example, with my NBA spreadsheet, you get access to the projections I build every single night, my entire NBA data sheet, which is color-coded so you know what's good, what's bad. Vegas total is my projections, DVP chart, my cheat sheet, my core plays, my Discord chat where you can ask me all the questions you want. And also for NASCAR, we do have a race today. So if you want access to any of my extra NASCAR content, I do a lot of extra stuff on NASCAR. You can check that out. And I think that's enough plugging. I said we can get right into the video because there's a lot of guys I want to talk about on this slate. So bear with me, but might be a little bit longer of a video, but it's why we're here, just to break down this slate. So up top, we have Nikola Jokic at 10,200. So Minnesota is going to be very short-handed. So I do have some concerns with this game staying close. Now I'm doing this video a little bit earlier than I usually do, so there's not actually no totals at all that I could pull from the website I pulled data from. But I did look at some other sites, and there were some totals for certain games. I believe the New Orleans Golden State games, like at nearly 240. I could see that. I think it's a 238. I could see that creeping up to 240 by game time. But Denver, they're over double-digit favorites versus Minnesota, and that's because Karl-Anthony Towns is going to be out and D'Angelo Russell is going to be out. So it's their two best players by far. So I could see this game blowing out, but I don't like predicting blowouts. So just say, like, if we just say Nikola Jokic gets about 35 minutes here, he should be able to crush Minnesota. They don't really have anyone that could contend with him down low. It's also a pretty good matchup, and it's a nice pace-up spot for the Nuggets as well. So if we head over to the pace column, the Nuggets are 28th in pace of play, which is one of the slowest teams in the league. But Minnesota, they're third, so you get a massive pace-up spot here, which I do like for a guy like Jokic. And there's really no one that can contend with them down low. Juan Hernan-Gomez, James Johnson, Naz Reid. I mean, Nikola Jokic should be able to have his way while he's on the court here. And on the season, he's at 1.44 points per minute with a 27% usage rate. I mean, if he gets the minutes, he's going to be fine. If we head over to the DVP chart, Minnesota does rank 16th versus centers, but if you take Karl-Anthony Towns out, I mean, that's just a lack of a big body. So, I mean, I think Jokic should have his way. So we can certainly look his way in cash games or GPP. Hassan Whiteside, so I'd rather play Jokic over Whiteside, but Whiteside, he's really, really expensive. I think this is the most expensive he's been all season, but he's just been so good point per minute wise. He didn't have the best game last time out. He had 49 fantasy points, which, back in the day when he was in that 6-7K range, we'll take 49 from Hassan Whiteside every single time. But unfortunately, he's almost 10K, and if this is the new norm for him, I'm not excited because I do like playing Hassan Whiteside a lot. I've recommended him a lot this season, so I'm hoping they knock his price down soon enough. Let me fix this. But he's fine for tournaments because we know his upside. He's got 60-point upside. He's right up there with Jokic. Now, I mean, I'd rather trust Jokic because he's got that triple-double upside. Just a little bit of everything. Better scorer, better passer. So, yeah, Whiteside, I mean, it's a good matchup versus Detroit. They really don't have anyone down low. If you look at the DVP chart, Detroit does rank 24th versus centers, 24th versus power forwards. They have not been good versus big men all season. So we can look his way in tournaments. And if you look at his numbers on the year, 1.34 points per minute with a 19% usage rate. I don't know if you guys can hear my computer. It seems like it's about to blow up. I don't know why. It's just like hot. I don't know why. It's a nice computer, but I don't know. Hopefully you guys can't hear it because it's kind of annoying me. But yeah, Hassan Whiteside, he's fine in GPPs. We're not paid near 10K for him in cash games, but I don't expect him to have much ownership, and it's a pretty soft matchup versus Detroit and no Damian Lillard, so he just has to take more of an offensive load. Zion Williamson, he comes in at 8,500. And I don't really like playing these New Orleans Pelicans players when everyone's healthy because there's just so many options. You got Lonzo, Drew Holiday, Brandon Ingram, Zion, and then you got Derek Favors, who's he's kind of whatever. But a lot of mouths to feed, and it's hard for them to pay off these price tags. But you can look Zion's way in tournaments. I would not play him in cash games, but I mean his upside's there. Now I believe this is the most expensive he's been all year. So I would not play him in cash games, but I did want to talk about him just because this game has a near 240 total. So there's gonna be a lot of points scored in this game. I think the Pelicans got over a 120 implied team total, which obviously is gonna be the highest on the slate. So we can look his way, and his numbers are very strong this season. He's not going to play monster minutes. He's only averaging 27 minutes per game. Got him for projector for about 30 here. But he's at 1.3 points per minute with a 30.7% usage rate. So when he's on the court, he's absolutely balling out. He's got 50-point potential. Now, again, I don't like playing these guys that much when everyone's healthy, especially when he's priced this high. But if you're game stacking that game up, you could certainly go with Zion. CJ McCollum, he comes in at 8,400, so they really raised his price tag. The last game, I believe he was 6,600 if I remember correctly, 64, 6,600. He destroyed that price tag, ended up scoring like 50 fantasy points, so they raised his price quite a bit to 8,400, but I still listed him here just because of how good he is when Damian Lillard's off the court. If you look at his numbers just right now on the season, he's at 0.99 points per minute with a 25% usage rate. If you take Damian Lillard off the court, that's about 1.2 points per minute with a 34% usage rate. So, I mean, his numbers are really, really good if you take Damian Lillard off, and he's going to play all the minutes he can handle. I got him projected for nearly 40 here. So, about 1.2 points per minute, but getting near 40 minutes as long as this game stays close. I mean, McCollum should be able to pay off his 8,400 price tag. I know it feels a little bit weird paying that much for him, but he's in a different situation with Damian Lillard off, so we can certainly look his way. And we know Detroit has struggled with guards this season. They rank 16th versus shooting guards, so do like this spot for CJ McCollum. I don't love the price tag, but his numbers with Damian Lillard off the court would suggest that he could pay off this price tag. Andrew Wiggins to stay in this game, so I don't know. I just don't love playing Andrew Wiggins, but I mean, if Golden State's going to keep this game close, which they could certainly struggle with that. It's not a double-digit point spread, but I believe it's about 8 from the site I looked at. But Wiggins, he's going to have to do most of the scoring here. I know you got guys like Jordan Poole and Damian Lee and Eric Pascal, but it's mostly going to be on Andrew Wiggins to keep this game close. But I do like this game environment here. Golden State, New Orleans, obviously, is going to have the highest total and pretty fast-paced game. 11th in pace of play are the Warriors, and New Orleans is second in pace of play. So I do like the pace here. On the year, he's at 1.1 points per minute with a 27% usage rate. He's the man in Golden State, so I think he's fine. It is a good matchup versus New Orleans. If you look at the DVP chart, they do rank 29th versus point guards, 18th versus shooting guards, and 18th versus small forwards. So if you're going to game stack this up, you could use a whole bunch of Pelicans, then you can run it back with Andrew Wiggins and a couple of the other cheaper Golden State Warriors, and I think that's totally fine in tournaments. All right, and staying in this game, we got Drew Holiday. He comes in at 7,800. Again, these guys are all kind of priced up, but it's a small slate, and this is an elite game environment, so I mean, he could flirt with 50 points. I think he's probably more likely in that 38 to 45 point range, but he's got the upside for it, and it's a really good matchup versus Golden State. If you look at the DVP chart, they rank 4th worst overall, and they rank 27 versus point guards and 26 versus shooting guards. So this is a pretty good matchup for Drew Holiday. And if you look at his numbers on the season, he's at 1.15 points per minute, which is great, and a 25.3% usage rate. Now, again, everyone's healthy for the Pelicans for the most part, so I mean, it's hard for these guys to hit their true potential, but I don't mind Drew here in tournaments. Wouldn't play him in cash games, but tournaments he's fine because of this game environment. Jamal Murray, he's a guy that can be hit or miss. I mean, he's had a couple of 50-point games mixed in recently, then a couple of 30-point games, but the guy's got plenty of upside, and if this game stays close somehow, I mean, I like the potential here versus Minnesota. It's a nice pace-up spot for the Nuggets, like I said, with Nikola Jokic. I mean, 25 spot difference. And on the year, he's over a point per minute guy, 25.7% usage rate. But like the spot here versus Minnesota, they do rank 22nd versus point guards, 25th versus shooting guards. So I think we could look Jamal Murray's way. I'm not really one to play Jamal Murray, and this is a pretty big price tag for him, but I think he's fine in tournaments because we're going to have a lot of exposure to the T-Wolves, so it makes sense to maybe run it back with some of these Nuggets guys and just hoping the game stays close. Christian Wood, he comes in at 7,400. Detroit's pretty much a G League team at this point. They got absolutely nobody, but Markieff Morris is gone. Andre Drummond's gone. I mean, the list goes on. Reggie Jackson's gone. Blake Griffin's out. Luke Kennard's out. I mean, it's pretty much just him and Derrick Rose at this point. And then you got a couple of some other scrubs, but yeah, we can look his way, 7,400. I mean, I know it's a bit much to pay for Christian Wood, but the guy's got 50-point upside. And if you take all those guys off the court, he's over 1.2 points per minute, and he's always been pretty good point per minute wise. And this is a really good spot versus Portland. That's kind of the main thing I like here is this matchup. Portland does rank 28th versus power forwards and 25th versus centers. So I think Christian Wood can pay off his price tag despite it being pretty expensive, but it is a pace-up spot for Detroit. As you can see, they're 25th in pace of play, and Portland is 11th. And on the year, his numbers are strong, but if you take all those guys off the court, the numbers get even better, about a 25% usage rate. So if you think Christian Wood is fine, not in love with it, but do like the matchup, and I like the player. Alonzo Ball, again, all these Pelicans are a little bit expensive, but this is a late game environment, so I did want to bring him up. I think Alonzo Ball is a safe bet for about 35 fantasy points with upside of more, just depends on how he's shooting. But on the year, 1.03 points per minute, lower usage rate, but good matchup versus Golden State. They're a bottom 5 team versus guards. 27 versus point guards, 26 versus shooting guards. So I think Lonzo's fine. There's a little bit of everything in the stat sheet, which does make him pretty safe. And he's just got that upside if his shot's falling. Brandon Ingram, 6,900. He did not play a lot of minutes in the last game. Ended up only scoring about 29 fantasy points. Was not that great. But I like his chance to bounce back here, and he's still pretty cheap, and I love the matchup versus Golden State. If this game can stay close, he should be able to pay off his price tag. Should play minutes in the mid-30s. And, I mean, like I said, this is a great game environment. Definitely want exposure to this game. Should be about a 240 total here. If you look at his numbers on the season, they've been strong. Now, obviously, he does take a hit with Zion playing alongside him. But we've seen multiple games alongside Zion where Ingram scored nearly 50 fantasy points. So I'm not too concerned about it. Now, on the year, 1.24 points per minute with a near 30% usage rate. Elite spot here versus Golden State. They do rank 16th versus power forwards and 28th versus small forwards. So I think Brandon Ingram is a very solid play. He's also very affordable as well. Serge Ibaka, I did play him in the last game, and he ended up busting big time. He was really chalky, so it didn't really matter. But he still only scored like 27 fantasy points, if I remember correctly. Just did not get the job done. But Marc Gasol is going to be out again, and we've seen Serge Ibaka have success versus the Pacers. I always want to call them Indianapolis, but the Indiana Pacers. But we've seen him have success for this team before, and they're a good defensive team. I will say that. But their one soft spot is versus big men. So as you can see, they rank 7th, 10th, 1st, 4th, and then 17th versus center. So this is their one soft spot. So we can target Serge Ibaka here versus the Pacers, as we've seen him have a pretty good game versus them before. I believe I actually played him versus the Pacers, and it ended up working out. Don't like the game environment here too much, as the Raptors are 13th the pace of play and the Pacers are 25th, so it is a pace down spot. But his numbers are pretty strong this season: 1.11 points per minute, 24% usage rate. Those numbers go up a little bit when you take Marc Gasol off the court. So I don't mind Ibaka here. I think he's fine. Gallinari, 6,300. It's just that he's a little bit too cheap here. I think he's a safe bet for about 30 fantasy points, if not more, if his 3-point shots falling. We know the upside he has if he's hitting his threes, and I've had a good track record with playing Gallinari. And it's never because I go out of my way to play Gallinari. It's just because he's like a last piece fit and it ends up working out. And so I really can't complain about him. I guess I have a soft spot for him this year, but good matchup versus San Antonio. They are not a good defensive squad this season. It's actually a bit of a pace-up spot for the Thunder as well. Not like it's going to be a good game environment like at all, but at least it's a pace-up spot a little bit. But his numbers are pretty strong on the season. 1.04 points per minute, the 24.4% usage rate. So Gallinari, I think he's fine as more of a lineup filler, last piece kind of guy. Marquise Chris, I believe he only played like 18 or 19 minutes in the last game. They were getting blown out. I forget who they were playing. I want to say it was the Rockets. That sounds about right. I think it was the Rockets. Game didn't stay too close there at the end, so he didn't get full run. But if he gets about 30 minutes here versus New Orleans, he should be able to pay off his price tag. Now, I don't like paying $6,200 for Marquise Chris. I know it feels a little bit gross, but he's in a new role now, and on the year he's at 1.11 points per minute. So he's fine. I don't love it, but he's okay if you want exposure to this game. It's also a pace-up spot, and New Orleans is pretty poor defensively. They do rank 22nd versus power forwards and 21st versus centers. So we can certainly look Marquise Chris's way. Derrick Rose, another guy who did not play a lot of minutes in the last game, and I believe it was versus Milwaukee. They were getting killed. So, but I mean, he's not going to play like 30 minutes. He's still working his way back from injury. But if we can get close to 30 minutes here versus Portland, and if this game somehow stays close, he should be able to pay off his price tag of $5,900. He's just been really good point per minute wise. If you look at the matchup versus Portland, they do rank 26th versus point guard, so it's a really good matchup for Derrick Rose. Also a pace-up spot, which suits a guy like him well. And on the year, he's at 1.18 points per minute with a 31% usage rate. If you take all those guys off the court, like I was talking about with Christian Wood, he's at nearly 1.4 points per minute with about a 36% usage rate. So the numbers would suggest Derrick Rose is a strong play if he can get close to 30 minutes in this game. It's also a really good matchup as well. And Malik Beasley, so we're going to be starting to talk about a lot of T-Wolves players here because the two main guys are out, and then they obviously traded the rest of their team like a couple weeks ago. So we definitely have a lot of guys to talk about here. So if we just continue here with Malik Beasley. I had my notes written down for it. Okay. Just wanted to make sure I had them. Sorry, I had to pause it really quick. I was looking at the wrong set of notes. I was looking at yesterday's notes. I was like, why can I not find these guys? But first guy up is Malik Beasley. He comes in at 5,800. And, I mean, there's just no bodies on Minnesota. I mean, Towns is out. D'Lo's out. So, Malik Beasley, he's actually been playing pretty well alongside D'Angelo Russell. So, I would see no reason why he would not be a good play here. I know he's getting pretty expensive, but, I mean, someone's got to do something on this team. And Malik Beasley, He should get mid-30s minutes here, 5,800. Not a great matchup versus Denver whatsoever. But if you take all those guys off the court, Beasley's got over a 30% usage rate. He's at 1.15 points per minute. So I really like Malik Beasley here. Again, the matchup's not great, but there's just a lot of minutes to go around, a lot of usage rates to go around, and someone's got to score on this team. So I definitely like Malik Beasley's chances to do just that. Bruce Brown, he had a 41-point game last time out versus Milwaukee. And again, there's just no one left on this team pretty much. I kind of left him out when I was talking about the other guys earlier. But I mean, it's a good matchup versus Portland, and he's going to be forced into minutes over 30 as long as this game stays close. If you over to the DVP chart, Portland, they rank 22nd versus small forwards, 14th versus shooting guards. But Bruce Brown should be able to get the job done here. He does a little bit of everything, not just completely scoring dependent. But I mean, he's fine. I mean, if you take all those guys off the court, he's closer to 1 point per minute. Should get over 30 minutes. So I think he's a fine play. Nothing too exciting, but again, there's just a lack of bodies on Detroit. Carmelo Anthony, his price only rose. Yeah, I think Rose is the right word. Yeah, rose 3,300. Not 3,300. 300 from the last game. He actually performed pretty well. And it's actually a pretty good matchup versus Detroit. And also Damian Lillard's going to be off the court. And if you take Damian Lillard off the court, obviously his numbers are going to go up, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But if you look at Detroit's numbers defensively, they rank 24th versus small forwards, 13th versus small forwards. So this is a pretty solid matchup for Carmelo Anthony. And like I said, his numbers do go up quite a bit here. So his numbers on the season are at 0.86 points per minute and a 22% usage rate. If you take Damian Lillard off the court, that goes up to just about 1 point per minute, like 0.93, 0.95, and the usage rate gets closer to 30%. Not quite there, but it gets bumped up a decent amount. So Carmelo Anthony, I think he's a really solid play at 5,600. His price did not rise as much as I think it should have. Nazari just continuing this trend with the T-Wolves players, so he comes in at 5,500, which is a lot more expensive than he was last time out. But when he's on the court, he performs very, very well. I mean, I got to give him credit. He's been pretty good fantasy producer, and if you look at his numbers on the season, he's at 1.23 points per minute with a 26.5% usage rate. The guy's not that bad. He's going to be forced into minutes around 30. He ended up getting the start over James Johnson last game, too, and he performed very well. He had close to 40 fantasy points. And if you take all those guys off the court, he's got a 27.9% usage rate, and he's at 1.13 points per minute, but it's a smaller sample size with all those guys out, so I think he could be even closer to his 1.2 points per minute, even more. So Nazarene, I think he's totally fine. It's not a good matchup versus Denver in the slightest. They're a slow-paced team, and they're also very good defensively. But again, these guys are going to be forced into big minutes, and they're going to have to take on bigger roles, so I think Nazarene's totally fine. Will Barton, I think he's fine if you're running back with one of these Denver guys, and he's actually probably one of my more favorite options because he's only 5,400, and the guy's got 30, 40-point upside, even 50-point upside if he's playing really, really well. But, you know, like the spot here versus Minnesota, they struggle defensively in all aspects pretty much, and it's also a nice pace-up spot for Will Barton. He's going to play mid-30s minutes here as long as the game stays close. I don't really see a reason not to like Will Barton here. He's been about a point per minute guy. He's averaging 33 minutes per game, so he's averaging over 30 fantasy points per outing, and he's got a 20% usage rate, so I think Will Barton's fine. Good matchup, pretty good player, so don't hate the idea of rolling him out with all these Timberwolves we're going to play. Damian Lee, he comes in at 5,300. He's got him for over 30 minutes here. Again, just game stacking this game up, and he's really not that expensive, so I don't mind him. He's got upside. We've seen it before, and he's a pretty decent scorer. So I don't hate the idea of using him. It's a really good matchup versus New Orleans. They're bottom 10 team defensively, 18th versus shooting guards, 29th versus point guards, and 18th versus small forwards. So don't hate the idea of using Damian Lee. Nothing too exciting about him on the season. He's at 0.86 points per minute with a 19% usage rate, but he's fine. I mean, he's going to play over 30 minutes, so as long as the game stays close, so I don't mind him. Rui Hachimura, he comes in at 5,300, gets that elite matchup versus Chicago. They just have no one that can defend big men. I mean, if you look at the DVP chart, Chicago, they rank, They rank 30th versus centers and 29th versus power forwards. When you play Chicago, you don't attack them with guards, you attack them with big men, and Rui Hachimura has definitely got upside. He has a near 40-point game recently. It wasn't the last game, but I think it was the game before that. He performed very, very well. Got him close for about 30 minutes here, and if he gets about 30 minutes for Chicago, should be able to pay off this price tag. And on the season, he's at 0.89 points per minute, which is not too bad. So I think he's fine. Not going my way to play him, but he's a decent lineup filler, last piece kind of guy. Thomas Satoransky, He sucked tonight. I don't think he scored a point. I believe he was over 8 from the field and he didn't score, and I think he had 7 fantasy points, which was terrible. Now, I actually ended up playing Kobe White over him in my tournaments, which was nice, because he ended up performing much better than Satoransky did, but it's really only up from here for Satoransky. He's never going to do that again, at least I hope not. So I'm willing to take a shot at him, and he's going to be a lot lower owned than he was. He wasn't even that high owned tonight, but he's going to be lower owned because no one wants to play a guy coming off a 7-point fantasy outing, but I'm willing to forgive him and play him versus Washington just because of the elite matchup here. It's a big pace-up spot for the Bulls. They're 16th in pace of play, while the Wizards are 6th. And on the year, he's not been too bad. 0.9 points per minute, 16% usage rate. If you take all the guys off the court that are out for Chicago, he's at closer to a point per minute. The usage rate doesn't go up too much, but I mean, it's just a really good spot versus the Wizards. They are 27th versus point guards, 21st versus shooting guards, so don't hate the idea of using Satoransky. Going down the list here, we have Kobe White, who went absolutely nuclear in this game. Now, they raised his price to $5,200. He was $4,700 last night, but the guy's got upside. When he's hot from 3, he can pay off his price tag quick. Like, I think he had like 5 or 6 threes, maybe even more, but I'm just trying to remember the ones I saw, but the guy was on fire. I think he scored 34 real-life points, and if he can do that again versus Washington, again, that can be a little bit streaky, but if his hand stays hot, he can pay off this price tag. And I love the matchup versus Washington. A nice fast-paced matchup like this suits him well. Like, he played not the Nuggets, the Suns last night, fast-paced matchup, ended up playing very, very well. Not going to play absolutely monster minutes, but when he's on the court coming off the bench, he's got a 23% usage rate, 0.85 points per minute. If you take all those guys off the court, gets to closer to 0.9 points per minute. So I think Kobe White's a strong GPP play. Again, it doesn't feel great playing him in cash games, but the upside is there for tournaments just because he can get really hot from deep really quick. Juancho Hernan-Gomez, he comes in at 5,100. Again, he's going to be forced into big minutes. Got him for about 35 here. Not the most exciting player in the world. If you look at his numbers on the season, he's only averaging 0.72 points per minute. But since he's went over to Minnesota, those numbers have risen a little bit. And when you take Cat off the court, obviously that's going to improve as well. So you can look his way. It's not a great matchup versus Denver, but again, he's going to be forced into big minutes, so we certainly have to have some interest here. So I don't hate it at 5,100. Trevor Ariza, he's fine. He had a pretty solid game last time out with Damian Lillard out. And at 5K, I mean, he should get mid-30s minutes here. I think he can get you 30 fantasy points, and you're not going to be too upset about that. Not the greatest matchup in the world versus Detroit, as this is not a good game environment, and there's a chance this game doesn't stay close. They could always pull starters, but I don't like projecting blowouts, so I'm not going to. But Ariza, he's a fine lineup filler. I really can't go too in-depth here because he's just not an exciting play, but if you have 5K left in your lineup, you could do worse than Trevor Ariza. James Johnson, I put him in here. He did not get the start over Naz Reid like I was expecting him to in the last game, but he should get minutes around 25 here, and who knows, maybe he ends up even getting the start. I don't really think he would, though, just because Naz Reid played pretty well, but who knows with coaching these days. But you can look his way. He's 4,900, and if you take all those guys off the court, his numbers are really, really good. It's a smaller sample size, but he's at 1.47 points per minute with over a 20% usage rate. And he can do a little bit of everything in the stat sheet. He can rack up the steals and blocks and a little bit of everything. So you can look his way at 4,900. Again, this matchup is not that great, but there's just so many guys missing for the T-Wolves. We can certainly look his way. Jordan Poole, he's been pretty consistent lately. He's been scoring over 20 points each and every single night for at least the past few games. I think it's like last 5-6 games, but he's been fine. There's just, they traded D'Lo, so he's been forcing extra minutes. Should play minutes over 30. 4,600, really good matchup versus New Orleans as a guard. They rank 29th versus point guards, 18th versus shooting guards. So I think Jordan Poole's fine. It means numbers aren't going to stand out to you too much, but only at 0.71 points per minute, the 20% usage rate. But if you take those guys off the court that were there, I mean, he gets closer to about 0.9 points per minute, or 0.8, 0.9. So Jordan Poole's fine. Nothing too exciting, but I think he's a pretty solid source of salary relief. Paul Millsap, just staying in this Denver-Minnesota game. I think a lot of ownership is going to be focused on this game just because a lot of guys are cheap and there's a lot of guys missing, mostly on the Minnesota side. But Paul Millsap's at a fair price. I believe he played 27 minutes in the last game, which is pretty encouraging to see. Got him for about 25 here. If he can get 25 minutes at 4,500 versus Minnesota, he should be able to pay off his price tag. And Minnesota has no one defensively that can really hang with these kind of guys. And he's at over a point per minute this season, 1.01 points per minute, which is not bad at all, 20% usage rate. So Paul Millsap, I think he's fine. I mean, not overly excited about it, but it's not a bad price tag. Eric Pascal, again, just another Warrior who's going to have to play big minutes. I got him for over 30 here. Nothing too exciting about the guy. He's at 0.86 points per minute in the year, 21% usage rate, but just one exposure to this game. I mean, it's the highest total on the slate. Good matchup versus New Orleans, so you can certainly look Eric Pascal's way. I'm not going to go too in-depth here, but he's mostly like a lineup filler kind of guy. But going down the list again, we have Jordan McLaughlin at 4,300. I really like this play. He's going to play minutes in the mid-30s, and at 4,300, I don't see how he doesn't pay off this price tag. If you take all those guys off the court that are going to be off the court for Minnesota, he is at 1.37 points per minute, 1.37, and a 21.2% usage rate. So McLaughlin is grading out as a very strong play despite the bad matchup versus Denver. And then one more guy we have is Anthony Simons. He is still pretty cheap, below 4K. Did not have the greatest game in the world last time out. Only scored 19 fantasy points. But the game before that, he scored nearly 40. And he's going to play about 30 minutes here. And it's a good matchup versus Detroit. They've struggled with guards all season. And he's still just a little bit too cheap. If you take Damian Lillard off the court, he's at 0.86 points per minute with about a 20% usage rate. So I think Simons is fine in all formats just because of his price tag. There's one more guy I want to mention. It's Zach LaVine. I just didn't list him here, which I guess I probably could have, but I'm not going to change it. But I don't really know if I'm really going to play Zach LaVine. I could add him on here. All right, I added Zach LaVine on here at the end just because it was a good matchup versus Washington. And I don't really love the spend up options too much today, but he's okay in tournaments. I know he flopped tonight versus Phoenix. Just did not have a great game, but love the spot here versus Washington. I don't remember if it was versus Washington last time he balled out. I want to say this is the game he flopped in, then he balled out versus New Orleans, if I remember correctly. But this is a good matchup versus Washington. I already touched on it when I talked about Kobe White and Thomas Satoransky. But we know he's going to be a usage monster. He's pretty good point per minute wise when you take all those guys off the court for Chicago. So you can certainly look his way. If you look at his numbers on the season, he's at 1.2 points per minute with 31% usage rate. Those numbers go up even more when you take those guys off the court. Going to play all the minutes he can handle. Good matchup versus Washington. It's also a pace-up spot. If you head over to the DVP chart, Washington does rank 21st versus shooting guards and 27th versus small forwards. So, yes, Zach LaVine, I think he's a pretty solid tournament play. Would I rather just pony up the money for Nikola Jokic? Yes, but I understand salary cap is an issue. So, Zach LaVine, he's fine in tournaments. But that's pretty much going to be it for the player-by-player breakdown or player pool breakdown. But before we get out here, I do want to talk about OverlayDFS.com, sponsor of the show. Alright, so if you've been watching my videos, you already know what this is. But if you are new to the channel, this is OverlayDFS.com. It's a more casual-based DFS website, but I really do enjoy playing over there. Would not recommend it to you guys if I didn't play there myself. And the thing I really like the most here is the payout structure. So if you finish in the top 10% of their contest, you win 9 extra money. To be able to have to do that on Draftkings to win 9 extra money, trust me, it's a much lower percentage than 10%. So I love the payout structure here. And so, for example, this is the $22 double deuce contest. If you finish in the top 10%, you win $180, 9 extra money. It's as simple as that. And the way you pick your lineups is, you don't really pick a lineup. It's there's no salary cap restrictions or anything. It's just a pick'em base website. So if you thought, this is from a couple nights ago, if you thought Bojan was going to outscore Larry Nance, you picked Bojan. If you thought AD was going to outscore Nikola Jokic, you pick AD. It's as simple as that. And whoever scores the most fantasy points, either win or lose that matchup. But as you can see, I did not do that great. I went 5-7 this night. But some other guys went 10-2, 9-3, 9-3, and they finished in the top 10% and 9x their money. And the big thing here is their 12-0 jackpot is getting really, really up there. I mean, no one's hit for a while, so it's due to be hit. So why not you? I mean, I'm hoping it's me, but if it's not me, I hope it's one of you guys that's watching this video. But it's going to get close to $12,000 soon. So if you go 12-0 in your picks, you'll take home $12,000. No strings attached. You win $12,000. That is absolutely awesome. They also have some other cooler prizes as well. Or challenges, I should say. So they're running a slump buster challenge where if you happen to lose 20 days in a row, not consecutive days in a row, but if you say you play once a week for 20 weeks in a row and you lose every single day for some horrible reason, they will refund every single dollar that you deposited. And if you happen to go 0-12 in your picks for one night, they will give you $500. Simple as that, guys. So check it out, OverlayDFS.com. It's really fun to sort out the games over here. I really do enjoy playing it. There's no promo code required or anything. Just go on there, check it out, have fun, and enjoy playing it, and supplement it with your DraftKings action that you put out every single night. So that's going to be it for this video, guys. Hope it was helpful. If it was, remember to leave a like. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Really helps me out. Really appreciate it. You also follow me on Twitter at Pennell16. Check out NASCAR if you haven't already. We got a big race tomorrow. We'll get all my content out for that. Check out the video if you haven't already. That's going to be it. See you guys in the next video, and enjoy your Sunday.